Hi, this is Anna Kopinski, and this is my presentation for global warming, how it affects marine life. So, my chosen complex problem explores the effects global warming has on marine species in the ocean. Warming waters have led to many unnatural occurrences in sea life ecosystems. Despite many activists, corporations making climate pledges, and other innovations made to slow it down, the warming waters are eliminating areas for food and breeding, as well as habitat. Even though we are taking measures to try and fix this issue, some measures are not enough, nor are they taken seriously. So what is causing rising temperatures in the ocean? First, we have greenhouse gases like carbon, methane, nitrous oxide. Then we have carbon emissions, and those usually come from activities like, for instance, cement pouring or burning coal or oil. There's deforestation, which obviously they're taking away trees to make room for agriculture or industrialization. And then there's the fact that the ocean already absorbs most of the heat from the sun. It absorbs about 90% of the heat from the sun. So then you add in all of these gases and it just gets even worse. So we have here heated waters make heated waves. I have this graph that shows what heat waves looked like in 2009 and then what they looked like in 2019. And we have the count of annual marine heat waves has increased globally by over 50% from 1925 to 2016. So that's huge. And there was a study done that predicts that even if we limit carbon emissions, the ocean will still be in a near permanent heat wave state by the year 2100. So all of this warm water here is coming from a lot of the icebergs that are melting and sending water into the ocean, disrupting currents and sending all of that warm water that way. So how are marine species affected? For one, there's acidification. Warm water is bleaching coral reefs, in turn eliminating entire ecosystems that rely on the reef for food and shelter. Coral reefs are actually, the actual corals are home to algae that live in little polyps on the coral, and those algae actually give the reef its color, and they also perform photosynthesis, which feeds the reef. So when that algae can't handle the warm waters, it leaves the reef, therefore bleaching it and also taking away its food source. We have biomass of organisms in the ocean is decreasing, and we'll talk about biomass a little bit in the next slide. And then we have waters are too warm for some fish and species, so they migrate deeper in the water or travel miles away to cooler regions. So looking at biomass, biomass is the total amount of organisms in a given area. Temperature-induced changes in the ocean led to a decline in the amount of organisms in the ocean, both predator and prey. In a study done by Hubert de Pontevis, it was observed that changing ocean conditions are impacting the physiology and biogeography of marine organisms with cascading effects on ecosystem structure. So there's a loss of habitat, food. Some species have suffered severely from those effects. The study particularly looks at zooplankton because zooplankton is an organism that is found all over the ocean and it feeds many, many predators. So a decline in an organism like that is going to cause a decline in the amount of predators in the ocean that feed on zooplankton. For instance, like whales. And so this study, once they saw that there was a decline and they're looking at it over the next few years, they're saying that marine ecosystems will change substantially by 2100 under these scenarios of climate change. And here we have a graph from another study. These studies observe changes in organisms residing in the waters that have gotten warmer. It shows that 83% of observed changes were in the direction expected under climate change. So the scientists in this study predicted what would happen to organisms in the water as it got warmer. So we have here, we've got little blue dots, little yellow dots, and red dots. So the blue dots show that the consistent pattern of change from climate change, and the yellow dots are the ones areas that showed no change. And then the red dotted lines show areas where it had an opposite effect from what they predicted. And now we have migration of marine animals. Warming water temperatures deplete vital nutrients and they decrease oxygen content in water, causing some animals to not be able to thrive in those waters. There were some studies done on the Gulf of Maine that show that popular seafood such as shrimp, oysters, and cod have migrated to cooler waters. And new species like the green crab are moving in and preying on remaining fish, especially clams and mussels. And they actually even saw animals such as penguins making a move in on the reef. They're also feeding on the fish that the fisheries would get. So it causes a big problem for the fisheries on Maine right now because they're getting so many of those species that are trying to get to cooler waters. I have this quote here. Everyone, everywhere is inextricably connected to and utterly dependent upon the existence of the sea. And I included this quote because I think that it really connects to the idea of my presentation and the significance of the ocean. It is a source of life for not only the animals in the ocean, but for us. So I think that it speaks to its importance. How changes in the marine ecosystems affect humans. There was a study done in July of 2018 that centered on changes fishermen had noticed over the past decades in the ocean as temperatures have risen. And so they basically met with fishermen and they talked about there was a decrease in fish. They noticed that the coral reefs were being bleached, and there was just an overall difference in the livelihood of the fish. They were saying that there are a lot of fish that stayed on the bleached reefs that ended up dying if they didn't leave, or most of them left to go to cooler waters, so they've had to move either further down the shore to fish or try and go to a completely different place to have to fish. And it says, with fish dying or migrating further offshore, it's harder for the fishermen to catch the amount of fish they need to survive in their ecosystem. So not only is it affecting the marine life, it's also affecting the people that survive on those fish. And I have another quote here. Human well-being can be defined as a state of being with others and the environment. And I think that also speaks to, there are so many people like I have here that go free diving, scuba diving. They do all kinds of activities, surfing, swimming, boating in the ocean. It's so beautiful and everyone enjoys it, but not everyone wants to take care of it. So some solutions are MPAs, which are marine protected areas, and they are in place to help manage and protect marine species in a certain geographic space. So they monitor the areas that can have fishing or swimming or research, and they pretty much control everything in the designated area to ensure it remains untainted by humans. And then we also have seaweed farms. Those are another possible solution because seaweed absorbs carbon dioxide, and it would serve as another source of absorption when carbon dioxide enters the atmosphere. The only problem with that is that carbon burns through seaweed very quickly, so they would have to have enormous amounts of seaweed in the ocean to absorb all of that. So that's either not doable, or that would probably become harmful for the animals that are living in those areas where they want to put all that seaweed. And other possible solutions, so Chad Friesman gave a talk, and he goes over 100 solutions to reverse global warming. Here I included his top 20 that he thinks are the most important. If I went over all of them, I'd probably go longer than this presentation would allow. So he goes over drawdown, which is the hypothetical point in time when atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases begin to decline on a year-to-year basis. And his solutions have the potential to replace existing fossil fuel-based energy with clean and renewable sources. He basically says that we need to focus on what we already have in the atmosphere and pull it back down. And he says we have real workable technologies and practices that can achieve drawdown. We just need to change the attitude from one of fear and confusion to one of understanding and possibility. And I have this quote, to really make a difference, we would have to live on an entirely different planet. I chose this quote to go with this image because I think that it gives us a good idea of that vast, stark difference of a world that we really need to have, or one that we're going to. So we also have, there's a talk by David Wallace Wells, and he talked about how he, in the beginning, didn't really pay that much attention to nature or the environment. He said that he kind of just figured that was something that was always just far off, away, something he didn't have to worry about. But then he started spending more time out there, he started looking into these issues, and he realized that it is a bigger problem. And he says in his talk that humans hold the power to do the damage, so that means we have the power to reverse it. And I thought that that was a really powerful quote, because that's exactly what it was. We did everything, we put all of the emissions and everything into the air, and now it's our job to fix it. So the complexity of these solutions is, even though we make pledges to offset carbon, it doesn't improve the situation, it just makes our actions have less of a negative impact. So you have these online ordering places that are like, oh, we'll offset the carbon from mailing you or making these products. And that's great that they're doing that, but in reality, they're still putting things out into the atmosphere. They're not really changing what's already in there. And then you have reforestation, but that's complex because trees that you plant now are going to take years to get to the size they need to absorb the amount of carbon dioxide that they need to. And even though growing seaweed to absorb carbon dioxide seems promising, there's no way to tell what kind of effects that it may have on marine life that already exists in the areas that they farm. Many corporations also do not care to try and offset carbon emissions. I know a lot of places are hopping on the trend right now, but a lot of them are not and do not care. Educating people is challenging because most people don't want to change their lifestyle. They're happy going to Starbucks and getting their single-use cups, which honestly I am guilty of as well. I try to use reusable water bottles, but it is hard. And many companies are coming up now with reusable sandwich bags, the reusable cups, kitchen composters. The only problem is that all of these things are expensive. Even if it's just a beginning purchase, it's still something that is expensive for people to buy. Like those composters can run up to like $500. So that's a lot of money for someone to spend to help the environment, and they're not going to see it as something feasible. So overall, global warming is increasing ocean temperatures, in turn leading to acidification, loss of habitat, bleached coral reefs, and a decrease in biomass. Each of these solutions that I've gone over, they can help stop global warming and can in turn prevent the effects on marine life, but all of these solutions are unlikely to be able to be achieved because there are so many different things that work against each of the solutions. Thank you.